Hello, and welcome into another exciting episode of Pete Frisky. My guest today is a somatic and nervous system specialist and the founder of Lift Oneself, also the host of the Lift Oneself podcast, the one, the only, Nat. How you doing today?
Well, Pete, I'm well, and thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation and where it's going to go. So let's have some fun and let's play.
With that being said, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, Nat, so everybody can know a little bit more about Lift Oneself and all that great stuff.
Sure. So Lift Oneself was established in 19, yet that came from me having lesions in my brain in 2000 and told that I was going to die within 3 to 6 months. Yeah. And I was in the hospital for almost 40 days and was released without a diagnosis. So without a diagnosis means there's no plan. And a year later, I discovered transcendental meditation. So many people call it TM. And I also must let the people know that I was a solo parent to twin boys at the time. So when I was in the hospital, they were 4. When I learned meditation, it was 5. And what meditation allowed was for me to go into my body and understand my nervous system more and release those emotional charges that were created in trauma. And, when you learn meditation, they tell you to cultivate a quiet space in your house so that you can meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. As like solo parent to twin boys that are
I was gonna
5,
say,
that's not happening. So what I did was I brought meditation to the couch. And when they were fighting, when they were arguing, TV was loud, I could see within myself of that nervous system wanting to interject, that nervous system wanting to yell, that nervous system wanting things to be quiet, that nervous system trying to figure everything out and make sense of things. And even when you start meditating, your hearing becomes even more supersonic. So then you're hearing things outside and you're curious about that. And therefore, it allowed me more ability to better understand my biology and why I was so reactive with things and to start creating safety within myself and that my nervous system didn't have to be on hypervigilance and trying to find threats all the time and that I could unleash my curiosity and go into, the unknown and what's possible. Yet when we're always in survival mode, we don't even know what that means. We don't even know what rest means. So, because I had death on my door, I was very engaged with meditation. Yet there was a lot of stuff that came up. And I remember with my instructor, I said to her, I was like, "I totally understand why people quit meditation. Like, all this stuff that's coming up in my body, I don't wanna deal with this shit. Like, this is a lot that's going on." Yet, like I said, death was on my door, so I had nowhere else to go. And so I went inward and I, had those crying fits and those yelling fits and those just numbing and trying to recalibrate and really be with myself and feel these authentic emotions that were coming up and finally holding a space to process, witness, and listen to myself and that little girl that was not able to be seen and witnessed and kept safe. So all of that transpired and my body came back online because I was told for a prognosis if I did live, I'd be in a wheelchair, I wouldn't be able to dance or drive or all these different things. And so, like I said, because of this experience, it gave me profound wisdom and lived experience and information. So, while meditating, that's where I got the call to create the business Lift Oneself. And Lift Oneself is lifting the ego, which is our protective mechanisms, our defense mechanism, and going into the oneself. And that's, if you call it universe, God, Allah, whatever you want to say for your creator of life force, that you can be in that and that there's a language and a guidance that this world cannot give you. And so it's being able to trust yourself and listening to those signals and those gentle tugs and that intuition within. And since then, I've been assisting people to go within their selves, understand their nervous system, understand their uniqueness, and reframe it as protection. Not that it's an inconvenience or there's something wrong with you. It's okay, well, where is there no safety? Where is it that you weren't able to have a space to process? And that's why I created the podcast in 2021 also to put myself out there more because there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that comes up in my nervous system. So the podcast allows me to engage with that and go a little bit more and engage with the fear and engage with the protective parts of my nervous system while giving information to others that they don't have to be alone. Because my whole thing that I want to do is create the space of community and belonging so people don't feel alone, and also that there's resources and different modalities around the world that you can access. There's not just a one size fits all. So it's finding out what works for you and also removing this stigma around mental health, that we're human, and can we start having conversations of how we can navigate when we're being dumped with a lot of chemicals and being dumped with emotions and being in environments that don't allow us to flourish.
I just have to say, after you just told your story, holy fuck is all I can say. Wow. That is a
Yeah.
story beyond stories I've ever heard, Nana. God damn, girl. Let me tell you what. Wow. Second of all, you're right. You're not wrong about it at all. I feel like, there is a big stigma on mental health. And, the problem I think is that people are scared to talk about their emotions, it's like when they feel those emotions, they start freaking out and they don't know what to do with those emotions. And then they start getting all like flustered, and then it's, oh God, this, and then it's, oh God, no, and it's funny when you start talking to people about it because you ask them that question, like I like to ask people, hey, how's your mental health? And the response is they look at you like you've just asked them some kind of question or asked them to commit murder of some sort. They're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm like, I'm asking how you're doing. Like, I could ask you how you're doing all day and you say okay to me. But if I ask you that question, now you have to think about what I actually said to you. You can't do that pre-programmed, oh, well, I'm okay or I'm doing fine. And it makes people think about what their next response is going to be. So, but I love it though. I love the fact that, you didn't let somebody tell you you can't do something. You're obviously sitting there talking to the Grim Reaper at some point, because I don't know how else you explain what the hell just happened. That was some wow, especially with twin boys, because I had twin girls, and I was like, man, it just sounded like, damn, all right, we okay, I got you there. I know about the twins, and it's true. I love the fact that you're just meditating amongst chaos. You're like, okay, well, there's all this great stuff going on around me. I'm just gonna meditate. It's all right. Okay, guys, don't worry about me over here. I love it. I really do. I really do. So when you started the podcast in 2021, what was everyone's response to it though? Were people kind of like, okay, do we let people know what your story is though? I mean, did your family members know? Because a lot of times, a lot of people, they don't really get a lot of support from their family members, or they get that, that sentence as, like they were giving you. They were just kind of like they treated you differently. Did that happen to you?
When I went through my healing journey from 2014 to 2019, there were a lot of relationships that I had that kind of, I see it as a port that people are docked with their boats on your, docking, yet some of them drifted off. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It's just that there's space and they didn't understand what I was going through. And there was also some solitude and isolation within myself. And for some, it felt like woo woo stuff because a lot of people don't want to talk about their mental health or really understand their nervous system. So when I did the podcast, a lot of people didn't understand it. They were like, I don't really get what you're doing. I don't really get what this is, until I had some of my friends as guests. And then they were like, oh, now I get it. And keep continuing on, keep going what you're doing because it's needed. The funny thing is, I'll show you another part where I have lived experience. I got this calling to do the podcast. So, knowing nothing about podcasting, you're a fellow podcaster. So, there's
Mm-hmm.
some things that you got to learn and
Same
some
thing. Yep.
softwares and equipments and all this kind of stuff. And after my fourth, I think, third or fourth interview that I had did, I completely ruptured my Achilles. And
Jesus.
so yeah. So I was ridden in bed and had to do interviews from my bed with my leg elevated and trying to deal with my sense of perfectionism that this isn't how you conduct podcasts with people and videos and all that, while, asking some questions and living in the mess of it,
Yeah.
of I had constructed something and it wasn't there, and not quitting. There were many times, because podcasting is a very lonely space. You don't get a lot of feedback all the time, and you're doing things and you're wondering, is it landing with people? And sometimes you record something today and it's not till a year later that people start start, listening to it and really understanding. Because when you're a visionary, not everybody understands what your vision is. It's later on that they're like, oh, okay, I get it. And so I had to rehabilitate myself of learning how to walk while also doing this podcast and going through a steep hill. So I'm very proud of the podcast. I'm very proud of the resilience that I went through with that. And also with this podcast, I was helping my friend for 18 months for her cancer battle, and she was given 3 months to live, yet
Yeah.
with me and the assistance of me, she lived for 18 months. And, going through that is its own significant challenges, and going to treatment and watching somebody's body, start to unravel and start to lose its life force and everything, and being with them in hospice and holding them until their last breath. So this podcast has brought me into a lot of intimacy to have some very profound conversations. And so the support, some people had it, yet other people, they may not. What I'm focused on are the ones that are supporting me,
Yeah,
because one
exactly.
is a million.
No, I agree 100%. When I started doing mine, a lot of people I knew. I didn't have many people on at first that I knew. I had a bunch of people set up already. Well, when the idea of this thing started, I posted what the idea was, and I could not tell you the response I had was insane. I look back, I had like 50 or 60 responses in a day or two of just people interested. I was like, well, damn, I must have something here. Okay, let's explore this topic a little bit. And as I go, I did invite some other people on. I've had musicians on and things like that, random people. I just started messaging. I'm like, hey, listen, I got this podcast, and some of them I had no idea would say yes. Like, there's a girl that had 20,000 followers on TikTok, or no, on Instagram. She saw my comment and said yes. And turns out that she actually has BP, which was really interesting because she was a big mental health advocate too. When I found out, as I started interviewing, we were talking for a bit, and I was just so shell shocked and surreal. I'm like, whoa, this is only like, I'm only 22 episodes into this thing, and already I got somebody with this massive following, 500 plus thousand downloads on a song, all these different things that, early on, I suffered from. I suffer from a lot of imposter syndrome at times. I don't realize how much effect I have on other people. A year later, 200 plus interviews, or I don't even remember. I lost count after a while, honestly. I just enjoyed clicking record and going for it. So many people had listened to the show, and it affected so many other people. I did not realize. Like, there's a guy, mentor Jay. He runs a podcast called Rock and Recovery. He did an episode with another girl I had met who does addiction. Everybody's addicted. Jasmine. The two of them sent me a message and they said, "Oh, happy birthday!" I did a birthday video collage basically. So everybody was sending in different things, and you didn't realize how many people you've reached just by that alone. And they're just saying all these very nice things about me, and I'm just like, I'm so surreal. Like, oh my god, they're talking about me. Hold on, And it's like, it's happened before though. It turned out that one person that's on my show that I had been on someone else's show, they were like, "Oh yeah, do you know about Pete versus anxiety?" And I'm just like, oh, "Wait, hold on. Oh, they're talking about me. Hold up." But you don't understand. All I'm doing is having a conversation with different people, and I take on every conversation possible. I think they turned on like 4 different topics, but it was only because they kind of blurred the lines a little too much. I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't sure how many people are actually listening to this thing. But you hear my name come up more and more and more now, and it's so surreal because people are just like, "Oh, well, have you met Pete versus anxiety before? He's a great guy. He's doing these things." And it's like, you don't realize how much effect you have until these people start giving you that feedback, like you were saying. You don't get a lot of feedback from people, and the only thing I went off in the beginning was my wife had told me, she's like, if you're going to get into this space, you need to be authentic. I'm just going to tell you right now, you need to be authentic. And she was my harshest critic though, but she was right though. She's like, you have to be genuine, because if not, people are going to see through that and go, "Oh, this is bullcrap. They don't care." And so like, you see the early on interviews are kind of rough. And then later on, as it goes, I start getting into more interesting topics. And every time you hit click, it's so much easier because then you get more reps of, doing it. So anybody that's younger that was doing podcasts, I have 2 people actually I mentor. And, Day was one of them. And there's another girl named Wanda that's like, she's always like, "Oh, you're always so excited. Always, your anxiety was kick up always before an interview." I'm like, "Yeah, because you don't know how the conversation is going to go. You hit click." And I've had no problem though. I think like ever since I've started doing this, I don't think I've ever had anybody have an issue. I think there's like one time it was a tough conversation, but it's just, you run into those type of people that do better in an interview setting versus what I'm doing, having a conversation about things. But it's been so cool. I couldn't even tell you. I've had more number one podcasters come on my show and be guests, and it was just so surreal because it's like these people said yes to come on, and I'm just like, oh God. And then one of my top 5 guests actually came on a few weeks ago, Dr. Jen. I keep messing up her last name, but she runs a podcast called Shrink with the Mic, and she's a BPT expert. And I've been watching her videos since day one. And I asked her one time, I was like, "Hey, Dr. Jen, would you be on my podcast?" And she said yes. Out of 30,000 people in this TikTok stream, she's just looking at it and they're like, it's so surreal when people say yes, but everybody's like, "Oh, well, how do you get people on your show?" I'm like, I just ask them, man. I was like, I just shoot the shot, man. Like, you never know until you ask somebody, you know. But it's been great though. Like I've had other people watch it, come up to me and say, "Hey, listen, I appreciate what you're doing," and it feels so good because it's like at the same time I'm kind of confused. I'm like, I'm having this conversation, but you know, more people approach me about more things. They're like, "Hey, listen, I know you do this kind of thing, so I feel like I could talk to you about this kind of subject." And these are close people I know. And one girl was like, "Yeah, I watch all your podcasts all the time and things like that." I'm just like, okay,
Exactly. And I appreciate that your wife held up truth to you because once you're in your truth and you're with yourself, it can't be used against you. Whereas when you aren't being yourself and people hold that up against you, you can crumble in that because it's not truth. Yet when you are standing in your truth, it's like, use it against me. Like, you can't change my story and I'm okay in my story. So, and that's what the world is aching for. It's not looking for performance, it's looking for the raw part so that you can give me permission to be human. You can give me permission to make the mistakes, to just be as I am and learn and, develop and everything else. So kudos on you that you listened to that call and that you listened to your wife that is your biggest cheerleader and your biggest coach of wanting to see you succeed. So she knew what was in you and what the potential was, and just being able to redirect you of trusting yourself and seeing yourself in a different way.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, like I said, she was serious because I told her what I was gonna do because it's like I had another podcast. I was messing around with some friends. We were screwing around with a bunch of things, trying different things, and it just didn't work out. It was okay because it's like you know what, it was just the first taste because I've always said I want to do a podcast. I started it, and then you realize how much work goes into it, and you're like, so you're trying to get these other people on board, and it's just like, yeah, co-hosts don't work out for me. So she said the other thing she did tell me is like, if you start this show, you have to be solo. You can't have anybody else. There's none of that nonsense. It's strictly just you. That's it. I said, okay, cool. Fine, I can work on those parameters. That works for me, you know? And then I started inviting people on, other friends and people I met through different areas and things like that too. And the conversations got really interesting quick because then you find out the stories of other people's stories. And then you find out, how much alike you are with a lot of people, and things like that. And, we've had some crazy moments. So I had a guy talking about suicidal ideation and he was just like scaring the hell out of people. And then it was like, ooh, listen, we touched a nerve on this one. Okay, I like this. Then we got into narcissism. Oh, girl, let me tell you, people were like, I go ahead to turn off the episode 15 minutes in because I had to take a break because it was just so close to the conversation. Like, and it was just me and one other person comparing stories, and
Mhm.
things like that too. And it was so interesting to see people's reaction to certain subjects, and then you start hearing people like, oh yeah, watching. Then my family members are watching it too. And I'm like, okay, which is weird because me and my brother, we don't really have like a talking relationship sometimes. But like one day he hit me up and he's like, hey, listen, we got to refresh your logo. So my original logo was sentimental to me because it was a picture I sent my wife and me just goofing around. I used that and then I evolved into what it is now. He's actually the one that sent it to me. He goes, hey, listen, we got to refresh your logo. Let's send you something. Okay, here, check this out. I was like, all right, I love this thing, And then all of a sudden he's like, well, I'm going to send you a bunch of other stuff. So the screen behind me is actually donated to him. I usually have it set up, but I'm like, I'm just going to run with it at this point, and I'll use it when I need it to and things like that too. But like ever since I started this thing, I've got to be a part of a Holocaust survivor panel. Next month, actually, I got invited to a summit to chop it up with some big wigs of like Good Morning America, Today, and a bunch of other places. And like things I never would have gotten to do if I never started this podcast, and it's so many like different shows I've been on. I've done a lot of different interviews with different people. And things like that too. And I love it every time because it gets easier to tell your own story to people, and then people start learning more about you. Because at first it was like, well, who the hell is Pete, man? Like everybody asked me that question. I think the one person to ask me right away was a woman that runs a podcast called Humanity 2.0, Vanessa the Vivacious. She came on. Vanessa and I were talking about her original project, Are You Happy? She's like, we were around asking people, Are you happy? And then we recorded it. And I was like, okay, yeah. So at the end of the interview, she's like, well, we didn't talk much about you. I'm like, okay, it's not about me. It's about you. That's the whole point of this show is we're highlighting what you're doing, and then she got me thinking, she's like, well, what about Pete? I'm like, yeah, that's a good question. What about Pete? So then I started doing a bunch of interviews and things like that too. And it got so much easier to start sharing little bits of things. And, and it just little by little more, the story just started coming out. People were just like, holy fuck, it's like, yeah, 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 you find out a lot of things, because like I tell people when my mom abandoned me when I was 10, and then it got easier to release a little bit extra of the stuff that was going on, and I did one with a guy named Flat Tire Andy, where he was asking some deep questions. And I was like, all right, let's go for it, man. He's like, here's the questions. What do you think? Are you ready for this? I'm like, yeah, let's fuck it. Let's go for it. Why not? And it's probably the most vulnerable interview I've done to date, but it felt so good to get a lot of the other things off the table, and a lot of things that people don't know about me and things like that too. So it was so easy to start talking about it a little bit more, and little by little. And it was great because I think that was the hardest part at first is talking about my own story. Like I shared little bits of it. That was it, and things like that too. But now it's because people kept asking that question, like, who's Pete? Who's Pete? Who's Pete? What about you, Pete? We don't hear nothing about you. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Eventually I'll write my memoir. I've been talking about, those 20,000 different things I do because I'm a man generator. So I have to have 50 million projects going at once. But it's just fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I've done my birth chart. We're going to do the Chinese astrological charts and things like that too as well. We're going to
Nice.
talk about human design. We're going to touch about a couple other things like where I'm going to do live sessions of people doing their different practices with me. And we're going to talk about it. And people are going to experience what it's like to actually go through these things. That way people are not scared of it. And they know, okay, well, like I'll be the guinea pig for you guys all day, let's go. So we're going to do a session with my guest from yesterday. She invited me to do it too. She was thinking the same thing I was. She's like, hey, let's record an episode and let's show people what a session's like. I'm like, let's go for it. Why not? Already at this point, I'm already out in the public spotlight. Let's see what other things we can mix up.
Yeah, exactly. And that vulnerability and transparency, that's what sells because it's not made up and it doesn't have to be, you know, given a script or anything like that. It's exactly the raw truth that people are seeking for and they're hungry for.
No, I agree. I agree. People want to know more and things like that too. And it's really cool because when I start doing these things, people are like, "Oh yeah, I watched that episode where you did this," or "I watched that episode where you're doing that." And I was like, yeah, it was a lot of fun actually. I think only 2 times I've ever cried in this podcast, and one was with Tiff Carson when she was telling this story. Oh my God, girl, I could not even tell you. I was dying over there on the other side of the thing. I was trying not to bawl my eyes out because this story was so rough what she was talking about. And I was just like. I was like, girl, we're going to cry together. We're going to do it together, girl. But I was just like, I was busted out over there. I was like, oh shit, I was choking up and everything. But it was so interesting because, I started getting an energy healing and I started realizing that I'm very, what is it? I'm an empath. I'm a very big empath. So like, things like that too. So a lot of that stuff gets really interesting, and then I'm energy sensitive. So like I start to notice these things. I couldn't explain it first. And then it got more interesting because I kept touching on it with different people, we kept hitting little marks of it. So it was interesting because where the show starts to where it is now, it's like, it's been an evolution of me because I started learning more about myself as I go to. And each person I talk to, there's different things we take away and different things they teach you as you go and different things to try as things like that. So I could never tell you a year ago I'd be doing breath work and all these other things that, I would never even have an idea what even half those things were until I met some of these people that have taught me these different things. So it's been great, doing all these kind of interviews. So I try to take on as much as possible.
Yeah, I can see that. And, we benefit from that. The more that you go within yourself and you're able to be comfortable in your own story and do the alchemy of taking those impurities and turning them into gold, yet not just keeping it for yourself, you're sharing it with the world. And anybody that's willing to listen, then they can see that there's a pathway within themselves that they can be curious and see. Oh, can I frame this differently? Can I relate to myself differently? Can I feel this story? Because many of us are really disassociated from our personal story because we didn't have a space to process and make sense of what our experience was or feel these big emotions. Many a times when, a lot of children, when they were sensitive and were emoting a lot, they were told to feel something different or that it's annoying. Never was it like, well, let me ask you, what are you actually feeling? What are you experiencing? So that you could have a space to process and understand physiologically what's going on in your body. Because our mind always wants to make meaning. And if it's going to make meaning of protecting you, it's going to create a script that separates you from your body. So there is some disassociation. And, kudos on you for having the courage to go inward. You said a very big word, and I'm very mindful that words are very strong. They're either
Mhm.
empowering or they're very harmful. So the word abandonment, that ripples to so many people because it touches a lot, some to the very core and some just to feeling something. And for you to openly say what you went through as a 10-year-old, that's a significant wound that just somebody hearing that, it's like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff that this person has had to navigate through. The terrain that they had to go through is one that, if you're willing to listen, is a very fascinating one. And
Yeah.
so I really want to commend you in the courage of healing out loud, of being the kind of lighthouse for others so that they can have acceptance for them and not the mass and the persona that the world tells you you need to be. That you can actually, take all your parts and be with it, be with the messy and integrate all of that.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And, like I said, I created a safe space here, which is great because that's what a lot of people mention too. If you ever ask them about me, they're like, oh, yeah, he doesn't judge anybody. So one person told me, I said, yeah, why am I going to judge you? I invite you to come here to talk about your story. Like, I'm ready at this point. Like, 200 episodes in this thing, I'm ready for any kind of subject at this point. Like, I've heard some
Yeah,
crazy stories from some of these people, and it's just like, wow, like, and when you start getting into these stories, you start meeting these really cool people, and then, you make new friends out of it too, and things like that too. So it's so nice when I meet other people and, the things that they're telling me and then they're all telling you about you. Oh yeah, and then when you get mentioned like on podcasts and things, it's like, it's so surreal because then you're like, hold up, wait a minute, they're talking about me, man. Hold on a second here. Shit. you know? And it's
exactly.
so interesting though, because when like I said, I shared very little, but I think with Flat Tire Andy and I just started hitting it off and we just started talking about things, and I told a lot of things on that episode that I don't tell anybody really because it's hard, because I fucked up. I know I did. Admitting that is the hardest part. I think it's like I have that problem where I can't admit I'm wrong and it really just kind of screws with me sometimes, and things like that too. So, ever since I started the show, it's just a little by little, it's been kind of like I'm releasing a little bit of myself and kind of like coming to terms with what it is. But then I start learning new things, like I said, from everybody I start talking to and, get to meet all these really cool people and more successful people than I am. It's not even like I'm envious of them because it's great because they took the time to come to see me. I'm very honored. Anybody that comes on this show, shares a story, comes to spend some time with me. It's great because it's like it's a new person you engage with, another person you add to your kind of your network source of people that you could reach out to if you have questions. So it's so nice with all the different people I had, and then when I did that video for the 1 year anniversary, it really just hit home because it's like, damn, dude, all these people, I had an influence on all these other people. And it's like, you don't realize it when you start this podcast, you don't know who's listening out there. You could look at it all day. You don't really, you hear some things back here and there from people, but like, it's so great to hear people when they mention your name. And I suffer from imposter syndrome too, though, because it's a lot of times it's like, I can't accept how successful I am, not realizing that all I'm doing is having a conversation, but that conversation is so powerful that other people are like, oh no, whoa, hold on, this guy's saying something, and in the beginning, it was like, I was telling people what I was doing, and it was hard to mention my podcast at first. Now I talk to everybody about it. In fact, I think my wife gets a little upset when I mention it all the time to people because people always ask me what I'm doing. And I mentioned something about a podcast, like I'm looking at something and we're all hanging out together, we're playing a game online or whatever. So we're all in the same chat group and everybody's asking questions and she gets annoyed after a little bit about it. So he's like, really, do we have to really talk about this right now? I'm like, and there's a younger guy I play with. He's like in his 20s. He was like, oh, are you on Apple Podcasts? Yeah. Well, I've been listening to some of your stuff. And I was like, hey, well, all right. Oh, okay. That's awesome. Somebody that young is starting to listen to it. And it's great because, we're educating him though on having this conversation because I feel like we don't talk about it enough as younger kids. These younger guys need to start talking about it. Guys, girls, whatever. You all need to start talking about these things earlier because if we start the conversation now, we can have a better future for a lot of them because they'll understand what these mental issues are and they won't go through the same things a lot of us other ones, We've cramming pills down my throat and I'm like, but it's not how it does it though. I mean, I get where they're scared at the same time. It's like, I like to explore other opportunities for things for people because I'm like, hey, listen, just because that doesn't work for you, how about my friend, Nat here's doing something, or, my friend over here is doing, all you different people are doing different things. I can highlight what you guys are doing, and then I could send people your way, like, hey, listen, this sounds like something that, this person, and then reach out and, just mention my name. Don't worry, they got you and things like that. It feels so great when you can do that for people. And people are like, oh, yeah, and Jay was like that too. He's reaching out a lot of guests and he's like, yeah, I mentioned your name. They said, yeah, right away. I was like, sorry, man, I'm going to tell you. Like, I'm just like, I'm good at it. I'm good at connecting people. So everybody calls me the master networker too. In my little
Mhm.
podcasting circle I'm in, and they're all like, yeah, you're the master networker because I connected all these people together in this same group, have all had a conversation together at some point, and it was all because of me.
Mhm.
And it's so great.
Yeah,
It's just like, it's like, wow. And it's
yeah,
been great. Like, technology wise, I've already been a tech guy. So a lot of this stuff kind of like, I figured it out pretty quick. Yeah.
yeah, it comes second nature, so you have the exposure to it. So
Hmm.
it's, and then the different things. Coming back to, where people say about the therapy, it's a valid thing because especially in North America, it's like you talk about your mental health and there's a consequence. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you are labeled with things or there's stigmas that are placed on you. And we have to call out, the big pharma. Big pharma, benefits off of people with mental health and being
Yeah.
able to just give them medication. And some of it is a tool that some people need, yet it's not something that is always having to be taken for a lifetime. And
Yeah.
a lot of them are realizing, like, at an older age, like, "Oh, my body and I can't take this anymore, and I didn't develop the skills to better understand my inner world and understand my nervous system."
Or the
So
ability to say no to people too. Like
right,
you can say
boundaries.
no. Like I think that's the other thing
Yeah,
too, is a lot of people aren't empowered enough to say no. Like, no, I don't want to take that. Or like don't do the research, like a lot of people do now. And it's always, oh, they're outspoken or something. No, they're just advocating for what they want. They don't want this weird drug you're trying to give them because all these side effects that add X, Y, and Z to things. Because if you listen to some of these commercials, it's all these flashing colors, all these great things. But then when that low voice comes in, well, some side effects you may have, and it just starts listing things off, and you're like, wait, aren't you supposed to be solving some of these problems? Because then Big Pharma's like, oh no,
exactly.
we could throw this in there too. That'll solve the problem too. But you're adding more problems to my issue. What do you mean?
Yeah, and a bigger price tag because
Mm-hmm.
this medication is gonna counteract this
God, yeah.
medication and that medication,
Jesus.
then all of a sudden you're on like, when I go into the pharmacy and when I see things, I'm like, my question is how many people are on medication? My question is how many aren't?
Yeah.
Even simple Advil and Tylenol. How many people need to take that for their everyday just to be able to function in their environment and the pressures of their responsibility?
Yep.
So these are the
Yep.
big conversations that we have to better understand, like, where are we going in the direction of a society and how are we supporting us as humans? Because if, technology was here to help serve and facilitate life, yet a lot of people are becoming very addicted to it and it's starting to impact their mental health
Yep. Yep.
significantly.
Yeah. The
Their
FOMO
dopamine
and all that other
receptors
stuff too. Yep.
out, and then when they're not on it, it's exactly like a fiend because they're not getting the chemical release, and there's a beast in us that comes out because it doesn't like what it's feeling. And so that reptilian brain in the front, it's like, "Whoa, I don't like what this and nobody's giving me the skills to go through what I'm feeling because I'm not getting this nice feeling and sensation."
Yeah, yeah, I love how you say, the whole technology thing because a lot of it's fear, the FOMO, fear of missing out, and things like that too, and it entices you, and that's their plan, So like, I unplug, which I like. Some days I'll just turn off my phone and I don't even answer any messages whatsoever, and I have to do that sometimes because it's an addiction, like you just said. I think people think addiction is just drugs. No, no, listen. There's tons of other addictions, video game
Yes.
addictions, addicted to your
Work
phone, addicted to
addiction.
TikTok, work addictions. All these things are all addictions. So like, let's not just give it a label. Oh, they're just drug users. No, there's so much more out there. Please stop.
You're trying to
Y-
soothe pain.
Eat that too, and then it's the just line of crap that people just start putting out, and it's like nobody checks the sources of what these people are saying, and I think that's the biggest issue these days. Is these young kids see these other people doing things, and it's like we're programming our youth to believe all these false narratives, and then we wonder why they don't succeed in certain things because you're giving them the wrong information. Like, how about giving them what they need to succeed, not the crap they don't need? Limit their screen times for some of this stuff too. Like, YouTube's great, but be careful what they're watching on YouTube because you don't know what they're doing. Hell, they can't even play Roblox these days without somebody trying to do something creepy, and things like that too. And it's just like, oh God. It's like, stop,
Well,
please
look at
stop.
social media. Like, I had a big thing. I had no idea that my child was on TikTok because most social media, you needed to do a sign in.
Yeah.
But when TikTok was introduced, it was open to anybody and they could have exposure to it and anybody could download it. You didn't need a sign in. So I was like, how am I banning this thing off of here when you don't even need a sign in to
Mm-hmm.
this? And let's go to last week. We are being so desensitized that people are being assassinated and it's showing up in all of the feeds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nobody being able to filter that out. And so there's remnants. And now people are making jokes out of it. We have become so desensitized by
Yeah.
violence that we don't even know how to feel and process this stuff because it's like it's everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the video, then the video surface, it's like that's somebody's parent right there. And that's what upset me the most. It's like you're all just putting this crap on there so people can see what happened. It's like you can clearly tell what happened. You don't need a complete visual of seeing the up and you're like their kid, what if his kids see that? Like that's their dad you're sitting there putting out like that and making a joke and a mockery of it. And then these people get mad when they get fired because I'm like, I don't think a lot of people realize when you sign up for a job, you might want to read some of these policies. The social media policy for a lot of these companies, people don't read. And then they're like, well, I don't know why I got fired. Well, did you read that policy? Because it says if you start posting crazy things, you are still technically a representative of this company. If they know where you work and they know where to establish you with, it's not good. They're not going to be a part of that. They don't want anything to do with that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that and they don't read that crap. You know, a lot of people don't read that. You know, we get all these things. You go through, okay, I'm at this job now. Oh, these rules, I got to read these rules. No, 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 listen, no, no. You might want to start reading those rules because those social media policies are what trip you up. And that's what's getting a lot of these people fired because they're making these videos making fun of this guy's death. And I'm just like, no, you may not agree with whatever he said. That's cool. But don't sit there and just start, talking about him. That's somebody's parent, for love of God. Come on now, stop it. You may not agree with everything he said, but the fact is, I like the fact that he at least made you feel heard. He gave you a
Mhm.
chance to talk. He let you say your piece, and he listened to what you're saying. You may not agree with everything he says, which you don't agree with everything says, but still don't make fun of this man's death. Understand that what he was doing is he's reaching out to the younger people and trying to make sure they understand what's going on and things like that too. Now, you may not agree with everybody says, social media, just like it just, I have a love-hate relationship. It's great at times and other times it's like, oh God, who gave you a phone and let you get on the internet? Please stop, and it's,
Well, we also have to look at mainstream news.
mm-hmm,
I mentioned this. I was like, okay, I haven't seen the video. I'm thankful it hasn't
me
shown up
either.
on any of my social media. Yet my 15-year-old was like, oh, did you see the video? I was like, how the heck did you see it? He's like, it
Right.
showed up on my FYP. And I'm like, my gosh. I'm like, you don't even realize like what you're intaking. And then it's like recognizing how addicted are we to being on these social medias? How much are they impacting our identity and our thought processes? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how many of us, we don't even know how to not be with our phone? That we have to thumb, like we're getting rid of a little hit and stuff because it is a real thing. Like the reason why they want you to do the ads and all that is because they want everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Yet when I said about the assassination, I was like, but wait a minute. CNN was showing 9/11 and people jumping out of a building. And our hearts were like dropping watching that. But
Yeah.
that was published 24/7, running all the time. So that trauma dumping started in that time. Before then, we wouldn't really see too much of violence. Like we'd hear about it and stuff like that, yet we wouldn't really see it. But I think with 9/11 and CNN
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting it all over, that just opened up the door that journalism was in a different manner and that everybody was going to really be addicted to voyeurism because that's what social media really is like voyeurism and being able to peek into people's diaries and personal thoughts and everything else.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah. And then a lot of those people put in fake fronts and it's like, they put in these little performances. And then after the screen goes away, if something gets released that they said something else, you're like, oh God, they're saying these things. It's like, okay, well, a lot of these people on the camera are playing a character. They're not being a real person. But when you go in the back scene and see what they're really doing, and it's like, oh, oh God, they're no, not him, or not Jojo Siwa, or these other people, whatever person you want to label as, oh God, I can't believe they would never do that, or what is it, the Sean Diddy Combs thing where they found out all those things that all these people started coming out, and they're like, oh no, he would never do that. Really? Well, then explain these stories to me, because like this, and then my one, I think the biggest one was the '90s, the Nickelodeon one where they were talking about,
Yeah.
all that other crazy stuff going on. And I was just like, oh, Jesus, no. Like, you watched all these shows as kids and you didn't think about it because you didn't think about what's going on. Because, we didn't know. We were kids. We didn't know what's going on. I remember 9/11 happened. I was in high school. I think it was a sophomore. Yeah, it was a sophomore. Or it was a senior in high school when it happened. And I remember everybody was freaking out. And then they turned the TV monitors on. And you saw when the first plane had already hit. And the second one was still circling around. And then when it hit too, it was like, we didn't know what we were looking at, and we, and when it came to COVID too, all the numbers of COVID came out, all the deaths and stuff just got you so upset because you're just looking at all these numbers and they just keep feeding you all these numbers. Oh, these people are dying, da, 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 this and that. It's like nobody knew anything about this stuff. Like, I think that's what we lost subject and lost sight of, is was like, we didn't know anything about COVID. Nobody knew anything, and everybody blames, the president at the time. Oh, it's all, he didn't know anything either. He's not a medical expert. He doesn't know. He's trying to do what he can at this point. This poor guy is trying to figure everything out and you want to blame him. It's like, what else did you want him to do? He doesn't know anything. He's trying to do what he can with the resources he has, and it's just, it became a blame game. And then the whole thing with Fox News came over. They were suing Fox News for saying false rhetoric and things like that. And it's just like, oh God, the news went from, just being the news to let's see who can upset people more.
Yeah, and if we look, hindsight is always 2020. Those that were speaking out during COVID were considered conspiracy theorists,
Mm-hmm.
and they aren't medically, informed, and they're doing harm and damage. Now it's like, oh, maybe you guys did have some insight and you did know some stuff and you didn't listen to the propaganda of the news trying to, because news, when you're in fear, they have your attention because you're looking
Yeah.
for safety. Give me the answers that are going to make me feel
Yeah, they
safe.
get you emotionally
Many people
charged and
didn't even
everything too.
yeah, many people didn't even know what a vaccine was. They thought, "Oh, it's gonna make it that I don't ever get COVID," and it's like, "No, that's not what vaccines do." It's being able to give your DNA and your immune system the recipes so that when it comes in, it's not running havoc, where
Right.
it's like you
Right.
can adapt to it. That's why they wanted, the crowdsourcing and people catching it. Yet they couldn't do that. They couldn't do the herding because the medical systems could not support the people because many people already had significant illnesses and COVID just ramped it up even more. And so that's why we had so many deaths and everything else because there was so much comorbidities that were happening, that there were silent illnesses that people weren't taking care of. Hypertension, diabetes, that many people had no idea that they were having because they weren't listening to the cues of their body. They were just go, go, go,
Yeah.
get that dollar. I don't have time. Where now you catch something and body's like, I can't do anymore. So these are
Yeah.
like the conversations to have about this. Yet, unfortunately, with institutes and everything else, there becomes this heavy hand of anybody that's going to explain something. No. And Big Pharma had its big hand on it. Like, where are the COVID shots now that are so mandatory that we couldn't go to work and couldn't fly and do anything unless you had it? And then they're going to say that everybody was going to get access to this. Then when it came out, it was like, "Oh, no, this country can't get it, that country can't get it. You guys can get the expired ones." And it's like, I thought all the scientists came together to help humanity, not create this little capitalism and stuff. So it's, being able to have conversations. And I think what's lacking and which we need to develop as a skill, especially with the younger generation, is critical thinking and listening. Many people aren't listening. They're just like, this is what you say. This is what my answer is going to be, rather than really intake the information of what somebody's saying and taking a pause, letting yourself digest it, and then coming back with some critical thinking.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think that people are too reactive. Remember now we live in a I want it now society. So like everything is so fast. We can get everything so quick. We could WebMD everything. Please God, stop doing that. According to WebMD, I've got cancer. Okay, well there's a lot more
Gosh.
process to that than you think. Calm down here
Yeah.
before you start freaking out. The whole WebMD thing. And I was like, oh God, please stop. Because my kid's mom was like that. She was like, oh, everything is strep throat to her. Everything's strep. I'm like, how can everything be strep throat, dude? Like, what is your obsession with strep throat? Like, they're constantly sick. I'm like, they're kids. They're going to get sick. They got to build their immune system. I love the doctor we had though, and I wish I could remember what her name was though. Amazing woman was always like telling her no, like just let their bodies react, let them their antibodies build up and things like that. Stop trying to medicate everything so their bodies can't handle it on their own. And I loved the fact that she was like that. She was like, no, no, you're fine. You know, just let them sit. You know, let them fight it off. Let their bodies out. Give them rest. Give them the fluids and stuff. They don't need all these medications because she's quick to medicate everything. And I was like, do we really need to be here for this? And the doctor was like, no, we don't need to be here. And she was just like the only doctor I know that would come up to you and say, yeah, I don't think so. No, no, I'm not going to prescribe something for you. Just let their bodies handle it themselves, you know? And, you know, we don't get those many people anymore now. Now it's just like everybody's quick to
Medication for
react.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my knee hurts. Here's medication for it. Here's medication. Like the body cannot give its own self-healing, and that you can give it some space and time. And to come back to the parenting role, the one thing that they don't tell us is the most challenging thing is to witness the pain in your
Yeah.
children and not be able to do anything about it. So if there's a way to control that sensation of feeling helpless,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to medicate because you don't have the skill to be able to witness the helplessness and the pain of your child, not taken into consideration. Their body has to know how to adapt and navigate in this world. And the same way that you can be in the pain, they can trust their biology. But the fear of losing and the fear of witnessing pain, we're not taught. We are taught in every kind of way to avoid pain. Where look at where our society has become now. They
Yeah,
don't
you know,
even
if you
know
think about it though,
anything.
now that you say that though, think about it because a lot of these new generation are more in tune to their emotions, and people are like, well, they're just oversensitive. No, maybe they're tapping into that thing that we don't like to talk about, our emotions. We're scared to talk about our emotions. These guys aren't, but then we label them as, oh, they're just overreactive. And no, maybe they're starting to get to figuring it out. They're figuring out that they need to be more in tune with their emotions, and you know. And it's the thing that we, the older generation, don't want to talk about. So we always label them as, you know, oh, they're just really dramatic or they're really sensitive. And it's like, no, maybe they're right. So they're the ones that don't want to tolerate the things that they're dealing with now. And we see it as being rebellious, or we see it as them being, you know, hey, we don't, they're just oversensitive. They can't handle it. They just don't want to work. It's not that. It's just they're not going to settle for crap anymore, you
And
know?
they're disruptors. They're
Mm-hmm.
changing where the plan like, you'll say, the school systems will take, for instance, we all know it's archaic. We all know it needs a whole new draft.
Yeah.
We all know that it needs innovation. Yet, it's still the same old thing, and we're telling the children, "Just stick it out. That's what you need to do to get into the workforce and everything else." And then we're wondering, well, why is there behavior? Why is there breakdown? Why is there not motivation? We're stating that there's an issue with our education system, but we're telling our children that
Yeah.
they just have to stick it out and survive and not expect that it's going to start breaking out in the seams, that they're not going to just be conformed into thinking that they have to, you know, be somebody other than who they are, and to take authority that it's the end all, where it's like, no, I'm going to challenge authority
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
what we don't want. The older generation, they knew, yes, sir, no, sir, I am going to be seen and not heard. Where these children are like, I'm a human being. Like, I'm not just this role of a child. I am a human being. I have thoughts, I have feelings, and many of them are communicating it. Back in the older generation, there were only a few, and they were called, disruptors or degenerates, or there were troublemakers, or the class clown, where now
Yeah,
we're
or you
seeing
know,
more
what
and
was it?
more.
Thinking the Breakfast Club. Remember the one guy that was always the rebel, and he was always loud with the principal all the time. Like that's this generation. That's who they're representing now. That's their represented right there, because that's what he was doing. He was the disruptor. He was always seen as the one guy that was just always a pain in the ass, but he was always loud and always spoke for himself, and you know, and things like that too. And I think that's that with now we got to remember now they have social media now, so now they can get their message out further because now they have a voice where they can be heard. Like people, somebody's listening. Like there's some of these people out there putting stuff out there. People are listening to it, and that's what it is. And you know, as for us before, we didn't have all that a lot of this stuff. Remember,
No.
because I think the most we had was American AOL, and then you had MSN. If anything, if you know when you start really stretching it, you're going to MSN and the chat rooms and things like that too. Now it's like you got Facebook, you got Instagram, you got Snapchat, you got all these different ways of these people to connect. And it's like, you know, they're getting all this information thrown at them so fast. It's like, that's the thing. It's like now they're seeing what it is that is really going on. And, you know, we we give them such a hard time, but at the same time, we don't give them enough credit because they're being individuals, because they're not trying to be programmed anymore. They don't want to be told, well, I have to be quiet and just be there, in that whole sense of, oh, well, you need to follow this, or, or else you need to go to college, and, college makes sure you get a better job. Not always. I went to college and I didn't do shit with the degree I had. It was a waste of time for me.
Yeah.
And my wife, she never finished high school. She's got a job too. She gets paid more than most people get paid. And I think that they all want to say education, education, but what are we educating them for? Because here in Texas, they have this STAR testing. I don't even get it. It's like their only focal point. Like what the hell is that? It's like, what are we not teaching them basic economics and things like that they could use later on, or teaching them a career? Like some of the high schools around me now, they have these programs where they'll teach them like nursing and dentistry and all these other things, like these career focused paths. At least give them something so when they get out, they have some fighting chance. When they get out, they can have a job if they want to be in these areas, or they want to do auto mechanics. They could teach them all that kind of stuff. There's all these great places around here where I'm at that I love the fact that they have like the different, you can go get training up the street, go get auto mechanics training. There's welding schools right there. The high school itself has, medical and dental stuff, things like these things that people that we need out there, and I think that's the problem with our education system, is that we need to focus on, training them to help them better succeed in life instead of just teaching them crap they don't need. Like,
Yeah,
that's
like the
great. All these great
memorization.
classes, all these other great classes. Nice. Okay, cool. Let those be little fun electives they can do extra, but let's have them have a core set of skills so they can actually make it through in the world, because I met a person who is a little bit older than I am, couldn't even run a cash register, and I'm having to teach them how to count money and things like that too, which, these are basic essentials that we should have been learning instead of all this other crap they're teaching us.
Yeah, exactly. And, the one thing that you want to do with children is expose them to a lot of different things because they don't know what their innate skill is. And it's, once you all of a sudden get exposure, how many people are like, oh, I didn't know podcasting would bring the best out of me. Like you just saw that I didn't even realize the impact of my voice and my energy and what
Yeah.
I represent. Other people all of a sudden they pick up a camera and it's like, oh, I didn't know I could capture people this way. I've always just been doing that. And
Hmm.
I think when children are young, it's exposing them to a lot of different things to see what that interest is, to see, because we all know the jobs that we do, many people don't love what they do. They're just doing it
God,
because
no.
of safety and security. Yet if you could love your job and also get paid, wow, what a society we would be in.
Yeah,
There wouldn't
exactly.
be
Be
people
happier.
so disgruntled and angry and rushing and everything else because they're going with flow and they're enjoying. And just because you love your job, it doesn't mean that there's not challenges. It doesn't mean that you're not facing things. It's just that you have an opening to want to find those solutions, not just be dragged on of like, oh my gosh, here's another one and everything else. So
No, I
better
agree.
understanding, give exposure to these children.
Yeah, or burning people out. People are really burnt out these days. And my favorite thing is that a lot of people email you, oh, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay, that's cool. So what are you doing for your people then? Oh, we offer 4
Exactly.
free sessions or something. That Why not offer full-time like mental health care for a lot of these people? Because you don't know what they're dealing with. And me and my coworker had a conversation in the morning. She's like, everybody has something going on at home, but they got to leave it at the door. That's great and all, but sometimes you can't. It overflows into your workspace. And it's hard, and she was the prime example because she was like, yeah, I got so overwhelmed in the beginning of my divorce. I came in one day and I remember the day she came in, she was so upset. She's like, yeah, I just can't do this, and just clocked out and left. And like, nobody asked any questions. I was the first one to ask questions. I was like, "Oh, is she okay? Like, what's wrong? Oh, well, she's dealing with these, Like, oh, okay. Let me send her a message. Hey, listen, if you need anything, let me know. I was the first one. I'm always the first person to try and reach out and bridge that gap. Things for people, because it's like, when it comes at the end of the day, everybody has shit going on, but nobody, like, everybody gets so worried about themselves. It's like we forget how to be human to other people. It's like, just be nice
Yeah.
to people. Like, everybody's going through something. Just send some kind words to them. Hey, listen, I hope you're doing okay. Everything, da 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 da. Things like that and all that kind of stuff. And even happy birthdays. I send out happy birthdays to my boss and stuff like that too, and things like that. And I try to remember to do. It's just those little things that matter to people. It's like, oh, hey, you didn't say anything to me on my birthday. I didn't add that in there. But it's not about me. I don't care. My own birthday. It's like, I'm just happy to be here. What I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. I love doing this podcast. I love reaching so many people. And, then now after this surreal moment of, how many people you've reached and how much influence you have on other people, and then they start telling stories about how they interacted with you. And, Jay was telling a story about it. He was like, yeah, he's pushing me to do a podcast. I'm like, first off, stop telling lies. It wasn't like, I'm heard everywhere. I don't know. I mean, I was sides monetized from the beginning. I don't know. I was just playing around with things. I found something that worked. I have no clue. And a lot of people are always fascinated about how are you so far ahead of the curve? I don't know. I just kind of went for it, man. I just asked people, how do you get these great people? Just talk to them. You know what I mean? It's like, so many people are so scared of just being rejected. And it's like, it's okay. It's okay. And then the site I was using now, how we met, it's like, at first it was like the rejection was hard. And it was like, I used to take it personal. Now I'm just like, whatever. I don't care anymore.
Exactly. I used to, rejection, that's a big emotion to be able to engage with. And if you've experienced a lot of trauma, that brings up a lot
Yeah.
of dysregulation. And, as you said, while we were talking, feeling wrong and
Mm-hmm.
going through that accountability and being able to accept certain things that you did. And I think, the framework, because when we hear wrong, we're ostracized and we're looked at as a negative aspect
Yeah.
where I want to reframe that, well, we did something that we know was quote unquote wrong, yet what was it serving? There was something that was fearful or something that was hijacking that was trying to protect. And I think if we use the framework of what was the protection, it doesn't give you absolution that there's not consequences or, everything is kumbaya. It's being able to better understand we're all human and we're doing the best of our ability. But in this world, especially because of the legal system, if we can just brand somebody wrong, then they can go into a
Mm-hmm.
certain establishment. And we have to, especially in America, we have to really understand that the legal system is another business because they get money off of that. And we have to really have these conversations of what punishment looks like and what we do to ourselves and berate ourselves and everything else. But that rejection, it feels like a real significant pain. And as we said, addiction isn't only drugs and alcohol and sex or gambling.
Mm-hmm.
If we're feeling the pain and rejection, we can all of a sudden overeat, or we can do Amazon shopping, or we can play video games, or we can do workaholic to try to get a sense of worth and validation rather than hold our space for ourselves to process that, yeah, this sucks. It feels pretty awful, but there's nothing I have to do about it. That's the thing. We think that we have to do something about our feelings. We don't know how to just let them pass through because, science lets us know it's a 90-second chemical dump. Yet when you're in anger or if you're feeling deep sadness, don't feel like no 90 seconds. Each second
Right.
feels like a freaking
Exactly.
hour and everything else. And you're hitting these highs, as tsunamis, and it's like 10 seconds in, it's like, I can't not yell. The inside of my mouth is going to be bleeding if I have to. Where it's like, okay, well, what are the tools to validate and meet these emotions? Listen to them, have conversations of being able to process.
Yeah, no, exactly. I want to touch back on what you said about, the whole feeling like, when you get mad or whatever, someone always, you kind of feel like you're being singled out. And it's the same thing when it comes to like suicide and stuff like that too. I feel like that's the same thing too. It's like when you find out somebody had those thoughts or attempted something, I feel like we make them feel like they're just a different person all of a sudden, and we treat them differently. Like, oh no, we got to kid glove them because they may upset them. And it's like, how about let's not do that? How about let's ask them, hey, maybe understand the process of why they feel like that. Ask them, hey, listen, why do you feel that way? Is there something we can do more? For all it's maybe something you could help them, help them feel like they're being seen or they're being heard. Those things that people don't want to ask those kind of questions, because when that conversation comes up, a lot of people panic. It's like, shit, oh no, this person's talking about killing themselves. Oh God, I gotta freak out. Don't freak out. Like listen to them. They're talking to you. Like, this person's calling to talk to you about something, don't make them feel singled out and ostracize them and be like, oh well, and I can't talk to you about this or whatever. If you're not comfortable with the conversation, call 98 and get them over there if it's the problem. It's like, don't leave these people alone if they're telling you they're having problems. Ask questions. Don't be scared to ask them about things. Like, don't be afraid to even ask them, hey, listen, are you thinking about killing yourself? Because you asking that question right there could jolt them to be like, oh shit, am I really thinking about this? Hold on, wait a minute. Is this really what I want? And it's like, then when you find out people have attempted or something like that, then you start like treating them differently, and it's the same way it felt like when people found out I had diabetes. They were like, they like talk to you like you're in a death sentence. I'm like, hello, I'm a person. I'm still fucking here. Like, I'm not dead yet. Don't make me feel that way. And it's like, oh, you got diabetes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, why do you say it like that? Like I'm always the person like, why are you saying it like that? Wait a minute, hold on. Why are you making me feel weird? Like I just got a death sentence or something like that. Like I'm not dead. I just found I have this thing. It's like I still have a fighting chance. Why are you marking me for death already? I don't get it. And it just feels weird. And it's just like I said, the same thing as suicide ideation. People kind of give them that weird feeling, make them feel real ostracized, like, oh, well, okay, we don't want to say something to Susan because she'll get upset. Or, no, don't do those things. Please stop doing that crap to people. It's so stupid, especially in that subject. Because it's like Godzilla's crushing Tokyo. They're freaking out. It's like, no, stop it. Don't do that. Or like if I'm freaking out and having an anxiety attack or I'm panicking, like people come in.
That's yeah, like, help me then. Help me to calm down then. Like, just like, I don't want that for myself. Yeah, it's the processing. And just to come back, because this is, like I said, words can be harmful. And here in suicidal ideation, there's some people that have experienced it, some people that have lost loved ones because of it. So I just want to hold space and hi in your background, your dog. And so in that, if somebody's trying to reach out for help, that was a really big step for them to reveal that to you. Also, if you don't have the equip to feel your own emotions, many people can't handle that. So if you're not able to, then find the resources and help that can assist this person. If just telling somebody, like we just said, anxiety attack, calm down. Well, telling a person, well, don't freak out. It's like, well, easier said than done. I don't know what to do with how big this is. And that's why it's important to create resources and places so that people can feel seen. And it's like, I may not be equipped to do this, but I'll still be by your side while we find the resources for you to be able to navigate through whatever terrain you're going through, whatever darkness you're going through. And I think we need to normalize the conversations about suicidal ideation and not just think it's a little secluded little population. A lot of humans at certain point in their lifespan, they may have glimpsed into that domain. They may have wanted to quit and just shut everything down and not realizing like that's kind of almost the same similarity. It's just very overwhelming in a person's psyche and everything else. So kudos on you for bringing this and highlighting it more and being a champion that we can normalize these conversations and not scorn people. Have better understanding of taking responsibility of our inner judgments and our inner critics and what we're going through. And even if we do that, that we can be accountable and say, whoa, that was my stuff. I apologize for making you feel a certain way because I didn't know how to, process that. And
Definitely.
I think that's where we'll develop the emotional intelligence with everybody. Yet it's going to it requires space. And a lot of people, the one thing that they want to always say is, I don't have time for that shit. I don't have time for that shit. I don't have time for that shit. Well, eventually the shit builds up and you're going to have to process the shit one way or the other. So if you process it little by little, at least you don't have this whole pile of manure that you have to process.
Right. Well, Nat, we're gonna have to start wrapping up this episode of PSA. I've absolutely loved having you. I'm definitely gonna have to you come back and we continue more conversation like this because I really enjoyed this with you. But before we wrap up, I have a question for you. If your mental health had a song, what would that song be?
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I love it. That's so fucking great. I love it so much. That's awesome. Okay, so the other question I ask all my guests, and the reason this podcast exists, is if you could break the stigma about mental health, anything you see that just absolutely drives you nuts, what would it be?
What drives me nuts? What drives me nuts? I think it's the part where we're not allowing people to feel, to really understand what the feeling and the processing is. We're just kind of using mindset. Cognitive behavior therapy helps in a certain way, yet when are you connecting into the body and not just always doing Jedi mind tricks? It's the body needs to be included in this and the nervous system needs to be included in this so that there can be processes and really understand the depths of our emotional intelligence. So I think in that aspect that I think a lot of people aren't listened to. They're just all of a sudden stigmatized or pathologized or given a label, and that's it without really listening to context.
I love it. I love it. Well, Nat, thank you so much for being here. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you? I know obviously the podcast they can come listen to. Definitely check it out because I know I'm going to go check it out for sure. I always need something new to add to my list of many things I'm listening to. Why don't you go ahead and plug where people best can find you?
They can find me at liftoneself.com. That's liftoneself.com. That's my website. They can find me on all the social medias under Lift Oneself also. That's my handle. And, just reach out and listen to the podcast, send me an email, comment on my reels and my TikToks where I give, nuggets of information to really, navigate being human. And so I really want to thank you, Pete, for what you've cultivated here. And it's been an honor to be here and share this conversation in this space. And I'm looking forward to connecting some more.
Definitely, I agree. And with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete Frisky Anxiety. You know where to find me. I'm Pete Frisky Anxiety. I'm an X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio. And I always say it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save their life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete Frisky Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?